to kick off on the issue of knife crime, something that's obviously hugely prevalent in the media and much discussed at the minute. And I mean, the first simple question is, I suppose, do you think there's enough being done? We've heard from a variety of obviously different experts, witnesses who've given evidence here. A number have picked up different issues and the wide variety of challenges that feed into the problem of knife crime. Carly Thomas, who's a caseworker at St Giles Trust, talked about the nature of people's lives, low paid work and having to be at work, not having time to be at home, lack of kind of continuity and supportive services, after school clubs, youth work, things like that. I wondered what you think the key to that challenge is, and do you think enough is being done?
Well, knife crime is something that I've talked about a lot, and obviously it's been a massive concern and remains so. There's a theme behind it, really, which is going to cut across everything I'm going to say today, I think, which is that everything that's emerged from our work really shows that there's this really vulnerable group of kids who are falling through the gaps and becoming marginalised. And those are the kids that we often refer to as being invisible, often until they hit those headlines, be that knife crime, be that other forms of violence, be that custody and the like. But also, the other part of that everything that we do leads us to believe that it doesn't have to be like that. So there's a real belief that it can be different, there can be a solution. And that solution is all about getting in early, about identifying those children when these things go wrong, and about putting the kind of springboards in place that help them kind of fly rather than sink. And I think hopefully by now you'll know me well enough to know that actually getting to that different point is an obsession with me, and I know some of you share it, but I guess I think that what we haven't got to yet is the point where there's enough people that are as obsessed about making this difference. I mean, I would like all parliamentarians to be obsessed, all of those that are, standing for various posts at the moment to be obsessed. And only then, I think, we can tackle the root causes of this and really make a difference. And I guess, for me, with just under 2 years to go, I need, my job is to convince enough people to make sure that in 2 years' time, you're not asking about this level of knife crime. As to whether it's enough has been done, I've been involved in Serious Violence Task Force, I've been involved in the summits. The level of discussion and the level of engagement is far beyond where it was. There's interventions around serious violence units, there are youth endowment funds and the like. But the urgency that's needed and the operational follow-through in the plan that's needed just isn't there as far as I can see. And what I would like to see, what my comment to the Prime Minister that day of the summit was that, I think she needs to decide who in every area is responsible, and I think there are structures there already in place. The safeguarding boards are the ones that I've pointed out, are there to safeguard children. They need a plan, but actually have, whatever it takes, fortnightly, weekly meetings. Are the risks being identified? Are they being reduced? Are those children who are at risk, the numbers dropping? And
because we've got a lot.
Yeah.
We've got a lot to get.
I know you always say that at that point.
No, seriously, a lot.
But really, I think it needs child level, family help. I want all those services that can help in an area to be working flat out in a coordinated way, starting by knowing how many children are at risk, and we know that there's a big gap there, and then determinedly bring them down. Youth work, though, is something which is a huge gap at the moment, and they're the ones that can translate some of this.
So you talk about this a lot, and obviously you mentioned the summit earlier on in the year, where you you said you'd written to various secretaries of state, you'd had those conversations a lot, and you didn't feel that anybody was taking that on board. Why do you think that is? Do you think they take your role seriously enough?
I don't think they're not taking it on board. I think the response is we as a government are taking this seriously. What I don't think yet is the precision yet of the intervention, the level of scale of intervention that matches the risk, which is high, and then also the clarity with all of those that are able to help to actually step in to do that. So, for instance, I think we should almost be on emergency measures in the areas of high violence. I would like to see schools staying open in the evenings and opening at weekends. I would like there to be youth workers that are proactively in schools talking to the kids at risk. Families who have children who are involved on the periphery, family workers knocking on their door and talking to their siblings. You know, all of those things. So go beyond the normality of the day into a particular a kind of focused intervention in those areas. And
the challenge I see in all of that, I think, is the fragmentation of those services. So you look across the piece that the variety of different organisations that would need to be involved in that, and even within government, there's no particular minister with that whole responsibility, fragmented across, you know, youth services with sport and then education and all the rest of it. How do you overcome that barrier? Because you can't make everything into a state of emergency effectively when there are so many things that happen.
And one thing that, you know, the more time I spend in this job, the more times, you know, I intervene. Of course, you're really happy when you get to a positive solution, but it can't be right that you just have to rely on someone to intervene at each point. There isn't a point in government that can take that lead. There are various mechanisms at the moment. I think there needs to be a much bigger strategy around vulnerable children, which would tackle this overall. But in the absence of that, then you have to make other measures. So I think it needs to be an absolute top priority at number 10 in Cabinet Office, and that needs to be, you know, a leadership team that's rolling out and monitoring what's going on. But the fragmentation is where the local safeguarding boards would and could come in, because they need to be absolutely accountable for the plan there and how it's been delivered.
Thank you. Just finally from me, that kind of same summit, there's some quite scathing criticism of government's approach to all of this. Louise Casey from the Troubled Families programme kind of said, well, if you have no idea what you're doing, hold a summit, and that's the kind of go-to approach. And you know, there are many areas perhaps where that might be evident across different elements of policy. You think that's a fair assessment? And there's a lot of that comes back, so she puts that back on government. I mean, obviously you have statutory powers within your role. There's lots of reports that get published, lots of data and lots talking about it. What are you able to do? What have you done to intervene?
So I've got no problem with the summit, but a summit is clearly a means to an end, and you know, no one could think that that's going to sort things. One of the things I did straight away was to write to safeguarding boards in the area of highest risk, and I asked them how many children were at risk in their area, and there were huge gaps in knowledge that came back. I mean, I had areas where we all know there are high gang numbers there, saying they didn't have any. I've written since to the Secretary of States and people like Simon Stevens from the NHS, asking them to do a number of things to protect these children. Now, the Secretary of State for Education has now said he's going to do one of those, which is write to all those safeguarding boards and make it very clear that they are responsible for that plan. So I think that's very useful. I continue to work with the PCCs, the Peace and Crime Commissioners, and they actually are looking for solutions too. But one of the things which is going to, I think, really make a difference is when I publish my vulnerability figures, which is in a month's time, again, a means to an end, I accept that. We're going to break those down this year into local authority level and also constituency level. So in less than a month, you're going to get a list, a data collection of numbers of children who are vulnerable in your area. Now, that's a starting point for a bigger discussion, a bigger plan, but this is all adding to that strength. But I'm not going to walk away from this. It's absolutely a priority.
What powers do you have to actually intervene? Because it's what means to an end. There's lots of, say, reports. There'll be, you know, analysis of numbers of vulnerable kids. What
well, there is one power I don't have, which the Children's Commissioner in Jersey does have, which I quite like on occasions like this. I can collect data, I can shine a light on, I can convene, all of those things, and I can send letters to anyone in Parliament and ask them to respond. All of those things have been very good. But actually, the Commissioner in Jersey has a power which is to instruct. And I don't have that, and I quite like that, but I don't have it.